I'm in London.
Okay, yeah. I was thinking that, but I didn't want to assume that. That's fantastic, man. That's awesome. So, how you doing today? You doing all right?
Yeah, good, thank you. I might sound a little bit kind of weirded out just because I got brand new glasses on today.
Hey, they look
But
great, man. I need
I'm
to
just
get new
trying
glasses. I think I'm
I'm
in bifocal territory, and I think I need to get my glasses upgraded.
yeah,
They look
they
good,
just
man.
thank you. Yeah, I just
They fit
went
really nice
bolder.
on your face.
Yeah, my wife says that they're too bold, but
Oh, I
I'm
love
in
it.
I'm in fashion, so
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
um
So you make clothes, right? So what's your signature line then?
So I specialize in suits and shirts, and
Okay.
but we do everything from suits all the way down to shorts.
That's fantastic. What's
But
the brand?
Roberto Revilla London, it's my own.
Wow, that's
Um,
fantastic, man. I just bought three sports coats, three pairs of pants, and three shirts. I probably should have chatted with you first. And I did it by mistake. I was actually I was doing a speaking gig in Bowling Green yeah this week, and they told me to go to this restaurant downtown. I went downtown. It was about 4:20 p.m. and the restaurant said we don't open till 5. I'm like, all right. So I went walking downtown, and in the back of my mind, my wife's the one that dresses me, Roberto. I'm colorblind. She basically puts my stuff together before I go to a gig. She takes
mhm.
pictures of it, and then when I get to the hotel, I look at the pictures and I know which goes with which.
Yeah.
And I remember her telling me when I left, she goes, "Man, you need to upgrade your wardrobe. This sucks. You need to just change this up a little bit." So that was in the back of my mind. So I saw this little kind of mom and pop's men's store, and I walked in, and they were about to close. The guy's name is Larry. He's about 70 years old. And I said, "Larry, do you have a moment? I need some clothes." And he goes, "Yeah, let's go ahead and do this." And so I FaceTimed my wife. I gave it to Larry, and they shopped. He went and showed her all the different things, and they picked out all this stuff. And this is nothing to you, but for me, it was about $3,500 later. I got basically 9 different options, I think, to mix
Mhm.
things up and stuff.
Yeah.
But what's cool about that guy Larry was he had dinner plans, and he called and canceled his dinner plans and spent an hour and a half with me and my wife just taking care of me. What great service. And
Yeah.
he smelled like my grandpa. He had Old Spice. He
Mhm.
smelled really good. He was dressed really sharp. Just a really kind man that just loved what he did. Fantastic. It was a good experience.
Oh, I'm really glad. Well, you know me now. Although I'm in my podcasting dress today.
Yeah. I have 2 questions for you. What do your
Yeah.
friends call you? Do you have a nickname?
Yeah, Bobby.
Bobby? That's
Hmm.
awesome. And another thing is, what happened to your eyebrow? You got a scar there.
So yeah, good one. I've actually got two. You can't see this one.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically one of them, the babysitter dropped me,
Good babysitting.
and then she rushed me to the hospital. And apparently the story is that they had to put 3 stitches in, and she was obviously really worried. She was hoping that it wouldn't be that bad, so that it could be covered up somehow, whatever. But anyway, I don't think she ever babysat me again after that. And I think the other
Surprise.
one, I was just racing this kid when we were when I was about 6 or 7 years old. This kid in the year above. And I actually got ahead of him, and he didn't like that, so he shoved me in the back, and I just went straight face down, split
Oh
my
my.
eyebrow.
Jeez.
And that one I didn't have stitches for. I was holding it together because I was really worried about my parent about getting in trouble at home. So yeah, I literally sat in school for the rest of the day holding it together, which calls into question the health and welfare of my teachers at the time.
Yeah.
If you can see a little boy kind of sitting there holding his split head open, all together rather. But yeah, and then it kind of obviously it healed up, but it's the hair just doesn't grow there, so I have that kind of scar going across. Some
Yeah.
people
It's
think
kind
it's
of
a
cool
fashion.
looking, actually.
Oh, thank you. Some people think it's kind of a like some kind of fashion trendy thing, but it's not. It's a genuine scar. So
It's just life,
yeah,
is all it is.
yeah, exactly.
And it's
That's
on
it.
both on the right side. That's messed up, man. They could have evened it
Yeah,
out a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, no, I know. They yeah, I mean, for any of my listeners who probably haven't been staring at my profile picture for the podcast and wondering about that scar, you now know about the thing that you probably didn't know about.
That's
But
awesome.
very observant, Eric. Was that your
That's
two
awesome.
questions? Was that your two
Yeah,
questions? That
yeah,
was your two
yeah,
questions.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
I want to know what they call you. I mean, because that Roberto, that just begs you got to have some kind of nickname. I knew you did. So
Oh
Bobby, can I
yeah.
call you? Mind if I call you Bobby?
Yeah, yeah, you can. I mean, you have
Thank
one of
you.
those names that, I mean, in this country, we tend to just give people nicknames whether we don't ask them permission. So I get called uh well, Bobby is what I've been called since practically birth. But
Mm-hmm.
my clients will have variations. I'll get Rob and Robbie and Robert, and I really hate being called Rob and Robbie and Robert. So for any of my clients out there that are listening to this, if it makes it into the final edit and you are one of the calling me Rob, Robbie, Robert, stop effing doing it. I effing hate it.
How about
So
Bert? You ever been called Bert?
no, thank God, no. I think the nickname Bert died out in like 1981 or something.
I was peaking in 1981, so maybe that's why I remember that.
I remember it from reading like kids' stories or something. There would always be some old guy in the story that was called Bert or, something like that anyway.
Yeah, well,
Or
here we
Reg.
got Bert and Ernie. We got Bert and Ernie here at Sesame Street. So I
Yeah, I
grew up
know,
watching
right?
Bert and Ernie.
I grew up watching Bert and Ernie
Yeah,
and Oscar the Grouch, and
that's right.
I always thought the saying, what is it? Gordon, what's the I can't remember the saying, but it has the word Gordon in it. Anyway, I always thought that came from Gordon in Sesame Street.
Oh yeah.
But obviously it didn't. But the way you link things when you're a child is often kind of weird. Or well, you don't have that many reference points, I guess. If your parents don't explain anything to you, you're pretty snookered. So yeah, there we go. Right. I love doing this pre-talk stuff because honestly, every single one, like you end up talking something different. I was interviewing a now good friend of mine, Wade Galt, recently, and our pre-show talk was mostly about soccer. I was trying to convert him to my team.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I think I'm succeeding. Just keep working on it. Eric, I'm really excited to be doing this. Thank you so much. And should we get to it?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it, Bobby. Looking forward to it, man.
Awesome. Welcome to the Tailoring Talk Show with me, your host, Roberto Rivilla. I'm a bespoke tailor, menswear designer, and owner of Roberto Rivilla London Suit and Shirt Makers. This is the podcast where you drop in full threads, but often leave with something quite unexpected. I talk to self-starters and creators about their journeys, the highs and lows, and the lessons they've learned along the way. If you haven't already, please support the show by subscribing. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please help me out by leaving a rating and a review. My guest today is a graduate of the US Military Academy with a BSc in engineering. He also served as a military police officer in the US Army in Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Europe. Strap in because this is going to be a long intro because he is so accomplished. But not this next bit. Just over 15 years ago, he hit absolute rock bottom and embarked on a journey of change with a mission to help as many overwhelmed people as he can to find their way back to a life of significance. He's partnered with the Speaker Lab, a leading coaching program for aspiring professional speakers, and previously worked for 18 years in the public utility industry in both Indiana and Colorado. He's a speaker and published author. He communicates and educates on topics related to discovering significance and the art of mastering human dynamics to achieve success. He spent the last decade training and educating athletes, entertainers, business leaders, public officials and executives on how to build value-added customer service programs, create culture, and gain organizational buy-in. His book, Rise Above Chaos, is a must-read and is available now. Tailoring Talkers, please welcome Erick Rheam to the Tailoring Talk Show. Erick, how are you?
That is fantastic. You made my mother proud. Thank you so much for that. That was fantastic, man. I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be fun. What a way for me. I'm in Indiana right now. You ever been to Indiana, Bobby?
I've never been to Indiana. I have been to New York, places in New Jersey. I have been to Florida, to Tampa and Jacksonville and Miami. And I have been to Baltimore, and I have not been anywhere else in your great country.
Okay, awesome. Well, I was just in Jacksonville a couple of weeks ago, and so I'm in Indiana right now, and it's 9 a.m. Friday morning, and I got to tell you, this is a great way for me to start my day. Thank you for the opportunity to hang with you, man. I'm looking forward to this.
Oh, you're so welcome. So I'm just trying to think where Indiana is. Forgive my ignorance.
It's in the Midwest.
Yeah,
right in the Midwest. Ohio's right next to us. Michigan, Kentucky, Tennessee's right below us. You know, and we not many people want to come hang with us. To be honest with you, we kind of like it that way. People just leave us alone. It's quiet here. It's fun. Rolling hills. We enjoy ourselves. We don't have hurricanes, earthquakes, terrorist attacks. We just have cows, corn, and a good time. It's fantastic out here.
So funny actually, you mentioned Michigan and Columbus. I think I'm recording with someone later on who was born in Michigan, and she now splits her time between California and Ohio. So
nice. Well, I'm going to give you a little tip when you talk to her. She's going to think you're awesome when you ask her this question. Okay, you ready for this? I'm setting you up for success. You need to make sure you ask her. Say, hey, do you play euchre? Ask her that. Yes, euchre. It's a card game, and when you're in the Army, you tend to you have a lot of downtime. You play cards, things like that. Well, all my teammates or comrades in the Army, they from Michigan, all played euchre, and they would school me in euchre. And apparently, that's like almost a religion in Michigan. Everybody plays euchre. It's a big deal. And so if you ask somebody from Michigan if you play euchre, they're like, oh, wow, that's fantastic. Same thing if you meet someone from St. Louis, you got to ask them what high school when they went to. That's a badge of honor because Catholic high schools are big in St. Louis. So if you ever meet anybody from St. Louis, ask them what high school they went to. They'll perk up like, oh, you know about St. Louis. Same thing with Michigan. See, I'm helping you out, Bobby. We're just getting started. I'm helping you out, man.
Awesome. Euchre. That's such a strange name. So what kind of a card? It's a card game, right? Like playing cards?
Yeah. Okay. It's just card games based on suits and stuff like that, and getting points, and it's just a basic silly game, but it's fun. And if you're from Michigan, you take it seriously.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. I'm going to look that.
Kind of like you take soccer seriously where you're at.
Yeah, we do. We totally do.
Yeah. And I'm glad you called it soccer. Thank you for translating that to my American mind. Thank you for calling it soccer. I appreciate that.
You're so welcome. You know what it is? It's like having spent so much time on your side of the pond as well as my own, and you get used to, and also I have a lot of clients in the States as well. So, I kind of am able to interchange. I think I'm able to competently interchange, different adjectives and nouns accordingly. But yeah, I'm glad that was a good thing, and you didn't find it condescending.
No, not at all, man.
Brilliant.
Hey, I went to public school in Indiana. It's hard to offend me, man.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I know that if I'm with one of my American friends, and if I say football, they automatically switch into American football.
The greatest American sport of all time.
Okay. The reason I'm hesitating is because I'm thinking back to college football you guys have over there, and I'd be in bars in places like Tampa and so on during college football season, and those games seemed to go on until like the early hours of the morning, and I just didn't understand any of it. Just eating lots of chicken wings and fries and playing lots of pool while this is all going on in the background, and my friends are going absolutely crazy.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I guess from that point of view, it probably is the greatest game in the United States.
It is.
Soccer is over here.
That's right. Well, actually, my buddy and I, when we graduated from the academy, we were taking a trip. We had $2,000 between us, and we started in New York. We wanted to get to Egypt because we had a buddy that we graduated with over there. His dad was a general of the army over there. His name was Ayman Ratab, the guy that we graduated with. And so my buddy and I, we basically hopped on boats, planes, anything we can get to Egypt. And him and I had this argument, and we never really got to a conclusion. My argument was back then, this was 1995, 1996. My argument was that Michael Jordan was the most well-known athlete in the world. And his argument was, no, the most well-known athlete is probably a soccer player. And I said, nah, it's Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is recognizable everywhere. And him and I fought like cats and dogs for weeks on that. And so we would ask people, like we were in Italy, hey, do you know who Michael Jordan is? Do you know who Pele is? I think Pele might have been the top guy at the time.
Pele, yeah.
And yeah. And so we did like an informal survey, and I think I won. What are your thoughts on that?
I think Michael Jordan's super recognizable. I mean, definitely over here, if you say Michael Jordan, we all know who Michael Jordan is. I mean, over here, it's probably partly because of basketball, and then partly because of, or mostly rather because of Air Jordans.
Oh yeah. Well, he's also a fashion icon, isn't he? He's got it going on.
I think it's probably the fashion. The fashion part of it has a lot to do with it. So yeah, but Michael Jordan, I mean, he's an absolute legend.
Can I ask your advice on something? You're into clothes. Yeah. So the big thing here, what I've noticed is I work with a lot of professional athletes that want to be professional speakers. And the big thing I notice about professional athletes and on TV is they wear really nice suits, but they wear tennis shoes with the suits. And it just seems odd to me. That seems to me like that's a fashion faux pas. What are your thoughts on that? Can you pull that off?
It's a choice. You are able to pull that kind of look off, but it depends on the fabric. So you can't really wear like a dressed fabric with sneakers. It doesn't work at all. Because the two things are inconsistent. They don't complement each other. But if you were wearing, I don't know, we have fabrics now that are kind of inspired by sportswear, so they have a little bit more stretch in them, and you can almost make drawstring pants out of them and things like that. And so you kind of cut those sorts of things, like almost like a hybrid kind of sportswear type suit. Then you could probably wear sneakers with that sort of thing and you'd be absolutely fine. Or rather than wearing a suit, you wear a sport coat, you wear in either a tweed or some kind of hybrid sweater type fabric, something that's quite unstructured, with a shirt or a t-shirt or a polo shirt, and then you put jeans on underneath, smart tailored jeans, and then you can wear sneakers. That works as well. But wearing a suit that you would normally see in a boardroom, for example, or in a court of law with sneakers, it doesn't quite work. But then fabric's key, and probably don't wear a tie. If you're wearing a tie, you're probably not wearing sneakers, right? Yeah, exactly. So fabric and texture are very, very important. It's the same as you can think of fabric and texture with the seasons as well. I'm just going to get this point in here because it gets brought up all the time. But wearing linens in the depth of winter when it's snowing and it's freezing cold, you don't do. Similarly, you wouldn't wear, flannels or a heavy tweed in the middle of summer, not least because you'd just be boiling hot, but also because, people would think that you need to be carted off to the cuckoo's nest. There we go. Thank you so much for segueing into tailoring and actually making this episode slightly relevant for once, because that doesn't happen very often.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm really keen on it because I'm a professional speaker, but I'm also 49 years old. So I'm at a point now where comfort's starting to be a big thing for me. And I want to be comfortable, but I want to look sharp on stage. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm really thinking about, and it seems to me like these days, the suits and stuff, they're becoming more and more stretchy, comfortable, kind of athletic feeling almost. And they almost feel like pajamas, some of these things. Yeah. And so is it Veruri? Are you familiar with that pants? It's kind of like a sport pant, but it's also nice. You can go hiking on it. In it, and then you can put on a sports coat and go to a meeting in it. It's fantastic. I'm really kind of enjoying where fashion's going and where clothing's going. It's not so stuffy anymore.
Yeah, that's right. I think there's been a lot of development in fabrics, particularly over the last few years with the pandemic as well. Because there was this recognition in the industry that people coming out of their homes and getting back to the office and hybrid working and that sort of thing would mostly be fatter. Because during the first lockdown in this country, anyway, people lost weight. Second lockdown, they stabilized, and by the third lockdown, we'd all given up on life, and everybody just put weight back
Including
on again.
myself. I gained 15 pounds, my man.
Yeah, there you go. So definitely the industry's kind of reacted to that, and we now have such an array of different types of fabrics available to us, so that we can make different things for people depending on kind of what they're doing. But I mean, you must have had a sense of appropriateness when it came to dress from your days in the army and having been at military academy and so on. So that must have all been about making sure your uniform was pressed and polishing your boots and so on. I mean, was it quite rigid? Because over here, I know that any of my clients that are ex-army people, they are very much on top. Like all of my ex-army guys, you never ever see them in scuff shoes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Well, I went to United States Military Academy, as you mentioned. It was actually, ironically, the academy was started because of the war against you guys, right? So it was West Point at the time, and it was a strategic post that General Washington had pegged that, hey, we got to hold this, because it was looking over the Hudson River at the time. The British had the best navy in the world. And if they took their navy down the Hudson River, they could split our army in two. So West Point protected that. They brought a big chain across there to keep the British Navy from coming down there. But Benedict Arnold, as history has told us, he became a traitor when he gave up West Point to the Brits, and he went over on the other side. That's why he became Benedict Arnold. He's a traitor because he gave up West Point to you guys. We got it back. And then what happened was, after our war was over, we turned it into a military leadership institution. The purpose of the military academy is to build leaders of character to serve the common defense. And it's been doing that for hundreds of years now. And one of the things they teach at the academy is that, if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others, and you got to be meticulous, because in the military, if you make a bad decision, Bobby, maybe you lose money, stock options, or whatever you do there. But if you make a mistake in the military, somebody may die, and that's someone's father, that's someone's husband, that's someone's son. And so it's very important that even the most littlest things you don't overlook. And so how you start that is how you look. And so, like you said, polished shoes, but it's even more than that. Your gig line, the way that your button, your button up goes, and it has to be lined with your buckle, has to be perfect. We have what's called a dress off, whereas there's no wrinkles. You like fold it in and turn it in the back there. Everything's tailored and fits just perfectly on your body. It hangs very well. But the funny thing is, comfort is never really taken into account. So you're miserable. I mean, those dress uniforms that we wear, you should put one of those things on, man. They don't really care what time of year. They don't care about fashion. What they care about is, do you look sharp? And those things are heavy, built for winter. And you're out there on the plane in August on the parade field and doing a parade in front of tourists or whatever. And you're sweating. In fact, if you can watch videos on this, you'll see on the parade, you'll see 1,000 cadets lined up. And you'll see a cadet literally pass out, and he'll fall down. And the other cadets will just step over him and close the ranks, and then they'll pull him off the field.
It's the same, but it's exactly the same over here as well. Like you see the Queen's Guards with the big bearskin hats and stuff. And, in summers where we get 90, 95 degrees sometimes, not that often, but when we do, I mean, those guys are just, falling all over the place. I'm probably exaggerating there, actually. Do you know what? It's really interesting what you say there about how any minor mistake when you're in the army or the military can lead to someone losing their life, and obviously the significance of that, and on a much less significant scale, it's not life or death. But I'm having a lot of conversations with people these days where, they're just like, do I need to care about what I look like? Because not as many people are wearing suits these days. Certainly people aren't wearing ties as much anymore. And I'm trying to say to people, look, you don't need to wear a suit if you don't have to.
Mm.
But we talk about something called considered dressing. You need to at least look like you put some thought
Mm.
into your outfit at the start of the day, because if you're handling someone's pension fund, or you're a wealth manager, or you're designing buildings, or whatever it is you do, and you're pitching for business, and you rock up and you just look like you rolled out of bed and just, whatever was on the floor kind of stuck to you, and you walked out the door in that without looking in the mirror, people are going to be thinking, well, I mean, if that's as much care and attention as you pay to yourself, how the hell are you going to handle what's nearest and dearest to me in business,
Mm.
in this case? So I kind of wonder if that consideration originally did come from the military. But I really, really like that. It gives me comfort that they're looking at those sorts of details when our lives are being protected by these fine men and women. But military academy, and then you're in the army and you did service, and then you were out of that and you entered the corporate world. And was that when you
Mhm.
then went into the utilities industry?
Yeah. Actually, this is funny. I got in the utility world because of love. Have you ever done anything crazy for love,
Oh
Bobby?
yeah. I mean, that's why I've been married for 14 years now. Hang on, wait. Let me just
Yeah.
check. Let me just check the calendar. Yep,
You
14.
better
Yep,
check
it is.
yourself. She may listen to
It's,
this podcast. You may be paying for it.
trust me, she's usually the one that hesitates over how long we've been married, but it's been 14 years. But I mean, that was a crazy thing. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I met this girl. Her name's Aaliyah, and she lived in Anderson, Indiana, and I was in Colorado at the time. And I got to tell you, man, when I met her, Bobby, you know what this is like. I was like, that's top shelf right there. You know what I'm saying?
Mm,
That's a Roberto clothing line right there.
mm,
If I can buy that, I'm top shelf. And so I knew that this is the woman I had to be with. But she had a boyfriend, of course, right? Any really nice young lady like that always has guys scratching around. So he was in New York, I was in Colorado, she was in Indiana. So I'm like, well, that's the one. So I got to take care of business. So I said, what do I need to do? I got to be near her. So I picked up, moved everything to Indiana, to Anderson, where she was living, and took a job in the utility because there was a position open. Not because I cared about the utility, I cared about the gal. So I
mm.
got the job. My mission was, if I just stick around, I can win her over. And guess what? It worked. Within 5 months, we were engaged. I swooped
Yay.
her up before she knew what was going on. 9 months
Hmm.
later, we got married. Well, that got me in the utility world, and I started liking it. Actually, I like the people. The people in the utility world are like, they're soul of the earth, Bobby. These are people that they're not pretentious. They're not fake. They're just regular, good people that just want to serve the community. And I just like being around people that like that, people that are authentic. And so I just enjoyed being around them. And so that started my journey when I transitioned out of the military into the civilian world. Is this girl, because I wanted to win her heart haphazardly, I just backed my way into this industry. So that's how that started.
Yeah. Wow. And then, so you obviously were doing well, because you're in like a sales role, right?
I was in what is called key accounts, where the utility has top end accounts where they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars
Hmm.
a month on utilities. And so my job was to take care of that group, that top end group.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And but then this, you're kind of seeing success in this new career path, and then at some point it starts to kind of take a little bit of a downward spiral. Can you
Mm-hmm.
kind of give some insight into what was really going on? Obviously I know all this because I've read your book,
Yeah.
but for the listeners, can you give some insight
Yeah.
into what was going on and where it then kind of led you to this quite dark place?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it was building up to that, to be honest with you, because in America, I don't know how it is in your part of the world over there, across the pond, as you call it, but we're taught from a very young age to live out certain stories, right? And so I was just living out the stories that I was taught to live, and so I lived out the high school story. That was fantastic. I had a beautiful high school experience. Well, after that, you're supposed to go to university, go to college, right? So I did
Mm,
that. I did what I thought I was supposed to do. I did all that. Then after you do that, you're supposed to start your career. All right. Started my career, did exactly what I was told to do. And then you're supposed to find someone you want to spend the rest of your life with and start a family. I was just living out these stories. Well,
yeah.
once you start a family, that was kind of it. That was the end of it, the end of the line. Now you're just supposed to ride it out and teach your kids to live the same kind of path.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I kind of hit this brick wall. Like, wow, what am I doing? I was frustrated. I was bored, and I started kind of living this destructive lifestyle because I had no purpose. And what I've learned, especially when I was leading soldiers and myself, is that a person without a purpose, Bobby, is dangerous. And when you don't have a purpose, we're meant to have purpose, right? We're meant to be doing something meaningful that's contributing to society. I think we're just hardwired that way. That's why humanity survives, is because humans gather, we do something of purpose, and then we pass it on to the next. Well, if you don't have purpose, that gets filled with something, and it's usually filled with something negative. And that's where I found myself. And so in 2005, what you're kind of alluding to, I hit a rock bottom. And the way I define rock bottom, it's not what happens to you, right? Because stuff happens to you. That's life on planet Earth. I've had to replace 6 tires in the last 10 days. I manage 20 tires in my house, which means I got 5 cars basically. And so I've had to replace 6 tires. In fact, another one's being replaced right now. Stuff like that happens.
So you're on 7.
Yeah, I'm on 7.
Sorry,
well, actually,
I'm not to take away from the seriousness and the emotional gravity of the story that you're trying to tell the audience.
No, let's talk about these tires, man. It's frustrating.
I don't know if the same for you guys out there, but over here, like if I get a nail in a tire or something, it is the most irritating damn thing. It is so inconvenient. But then if it happens in a short space of time, that's like, I mean, you're looking up at the sky and you're like, God, like what have I done recently to deserve this? But you're on number 7 in
That's right.
less than 2 weeks. That's
yeah.
I'm so sorry, Eric.
Yeah. Well, literally yesterday sorry. I was taking a nap. I get a nap a day. 20 minutes is all I get. And of course, everything happens during my nap. My son calls, said, Dad, my tire's messed up. So I had to get up and go help him and take care of that. And it's not a regular tire. It's a Jeep tire. These tires are huge. These are like $600-700 tires, man. So
yeah.
Anyway, so my point is that when stuff happens to you, that's just life on planet Earth. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about, rock bottom for me, or the way I define it, is when you let the people that are closest to you down, right? Because I believe as humans, the most important thing that we hold dear are the relationships that we keep. That's the most important thing to us. And so when you let people like that down, that's a rock bottom. And that's where I found myself. And my rock bottom came in the form of 3 gut punches. So gut punch number 1, just talked about my wife, right? Well, we were newlywed in 2005. She looked up at me and she had bloodshot eyes because she'd been crying. She's a beautiful, gorgeous little girl with these doe eyes. She's about 5'2". She was looking up at me in those bloodshot eyes. And she said, I deserve better. She was basically telling me I was not living up to my bargain of being a good husband. And I got to tell you, that hurt, because when the person you chose to spend the rest of your life with, your best friend, looks at you and basically says, you're not good enough, that's a gut punch. Yeah. Gut punch number 2 for me was when I laid my hands on my father and I threw him out of my house in anger and told him to get out of my house. He was my best man at my wedding, Bobby, my hero. He was a policeman for 40 years. He started out in New York. You've been in New York. He started out in the New York area. It was a chief of police his last 8 years. Dude was fantastic. And he came to see his grandbabies. My twin boys were just born. Him and my mom flew out from Indiana to Colorado to hang with us. They wanted to see their grandkids. They want to hang out with me. They were supposed to stay for 10 days. My dad and I lasted 2 before we got into a drop dead argument. I laid my hands on my dad and physically pushed him out of my house. Have you ever done anything, Bobby, where you were so mad and you had this outer body experience and you're going to regret it? Yeah. Right. You can't help yourself, but you just do it anyway. You've been there before.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I was at. That was my gut punch number 2, but gut punch number 3, you're suspended, is what my human resources director said to me when he looked me in the eyes after a week-long investigation where some of the people I was working with said I was abusing my power and they were having enough. They weren't having it. Right. And so what happened is I just got out of the military. I lacked situational awareness. I was ambitious. I was talented, but I was treating my colleagues like soldiers. What worked in the military doesn't work in the civilian world. And so my human resources director said, Eric, don't come back to work on Monday. Take a week off and figure some things out. So I found myself in a dark place, in 2005, asking myself, how did I get here? What was the deal? And so that first day of suspension, I don't know about you, you're a pretty successful guy. You're probably routine based. You got routines, right? And so I had my routine to get up and go to work. And for the first time in my adult career, I had no place to go. So I got up, I got cleaned up and told my wife I'll be home a little later. And I went on a drive. And I eventually found myself in this small little town called Niwot, Colorado. It's about 15 minutes outside of Boulder, Colorado. That's Colorado University. And then about 45 minutes where I lived at the time. And I told my wife, I was wanted to be close enough if my wife needed me, she can call me and I can go back home. But I wanted to be far enough where I can think about, that was my life and what was going on. This town, by the way, Niwot, Bobby, is gorgeous little town. It's like a Hallmark movie. It's beautiful. You go right downtown and there's a coffee shop right in the middle, right? And so I go to that coffee shop, I get a cup of coffee, and I go sit down at a table that's overlooking the town, and I just start sipping that coffee. And for the next 7 hours, I begin to think about my life, just contemplating, meditating on what am I doing? Why am I finding myself in this place? And so as I begin to think about my life, in fact, I went there every day that week. By the end of it, I knew all the baristas' names. I even knew the mayor's name because he came in there several times. I don't know what they thought of me, but I spent the whole week there just going there and thinking. And I began to realize that there was this unknown force that whenever it seemed like I got any type of momentum, I would shoot myself in the foot because this voice in the back of my head was constantly influencing bad decisions. And I'm like, what is this force? What is this deal? So I decided to give it a name, and I started to call it the Beast by the end of the week. And I realized that this beast was in my life, and it was riding shotgun in my life, and it was influencing me into a destructive lifestyle. And the question I had to ask myself, though, is could I tame it? Because I couldn't get rid of it. We all have that negative voice. You have it too. We all have it. We can't get rid of it.
People call it different things. So, it's most commonly referred to as the devil.
Yeah.
I know Bruce Lee referred to it as the dragon. And
I love Dexter, that. That's good.
One of my favorite shows, Dexter, refers to it as his dark passenger.
That's awesome. Well, the reason why I gave it a kind of an animal name, in fact, when I do my talks, it looks like a wolf when I throw it up there. And the reason why I did that is because I don't believe that force cares about you or I. I don't think it has a personal vendetta to us. You ever watch those animal shows when you see like a lion pounce on some harmless little animal and you feel so bad for that animal and you think, man, that lion's so mean. It's killing someone's mother. How can it do that? Well, the lion's just surviving. It's just a machine. It doesn't think about that. Well, the beast is the same way. It's just a machine, and it just shows up and it disrupts our lives. So what I realized is that I had to figure out a way to tame it. Right. And so I had to start a process to do that. But there was something deeper than that. It wasn't just a beast. The beast was just a symptom. When I began to think about where I was in my life at that point, what I realized is that I had talent. Listen, I graduated from the United States Military Academy. I led soldiers into harm's way in Bosnia and Herzegovina and brought them home safely to their families. I was obviously competent. But the problem was I had no path. I had no purpose. But more importantly, I lacked significance. And that was the key. You see, here's what I believe. I believe we all want to achieve some level of significance in our life, right? None of us wants to get at the end of our life and realize, Bobby, that it meant nothing. We want to have an impact in our communities, our families, and our career. Did you know you're going to spend on average 82,000 hours of your life working? And so if you're going to invest that amount of time, you want to know that it meant something at the end of it. So at the end of that week-long suspension, the good news is I still had my wife, I still had my career, I still had my dad, but I was going to have to make some changes, or who knows how long my wife would hang on. So what that did is that started me on a 15-year journey to get myself back on track, to figure out how could I cut through the whirlwind of my life, Bobby, so I could rise above the chaos and discover my level of significance. That all started in 2005.
Yeah. How did you start to kind of break this down, because there might be people listening right now, and I know I've definitely been there at certain times in my life where you go through these periods of chaos, and it might not be leading you, to somewhere quite where you were at. But, everybody has different levels. And everything, I use the Christmas lights analogy a lot, right? It can often feel like the Christmas lights you get down from the attic and then you kind of look at it and they're just a mess and you can't unpick the damn things. So people deal with that in different ways, right? Some people say, right, okay, we need to untangle these lights. They were straight once before. We can get them straight again. We just need to kind of be patient. And then you have people like me that will work on that for about 10 seconds, and then I'll go get a pair of scissors and I'll just cut the damn things up and just go order a new set. So how do you how do you begin to how would you sort of kind of guide someone through trying to start working through the
Ah,
chaos
that's
in order
awesome,
to
man.
rise above the chaos?
That's awesome. You're good at this, Bobby. That's a fantastic question. I'm really enjoying this conversation. So that's a great question. Well, one of the first things I did at the end of that week is, for the first time, what I did is I actually wrote down on a piece of paper what I thought a meaningful life looked like. I'd never done that before. And I
Mm,
think something magical happens. It's one of the reasons why I'm a writer, because I feel like there's transformation in writing. And so I believe something magical happens when you take stuff out of your head and you put it on paper.
put
It,
it
it
down,
almost
yeah.
solidifies your thinking a little bit. And so I wrote down in three areas: my family, my career, and my personal life. I wrote down, what does a meaningful life look like for me? Because I had to kind of crystallize where I wanted to go with it. But that was just a start. So here's what I recommend for anybody that's going through chaos. Spoiler alert, that's everybody on planet Earth. We just go
Hmm.
from chaotic moment to chaotic moment to chaotic moment. This is life on planet Earth. So the first step in my book, I talk about it. Principle number one is you got to understand your why. So whenever you wake up every day, your soul demands that you answer the question why. And listen, if you don't know your why, Bobby, and you step into a hostile world, and as soon as you leave your house, you're in a hostile world. Let there be no mistake. And if you walk out into a hostile world, you don't know what your why is, the beast is going to eat you alive.
Mm.
Because when you don't have your why, you lose your way. And that was my problem. I didn't know my why. So I didn't have any way whatsoever. That's why I was vulnerable to the beast. So I believe the why is a two-part formula. All right. Now you mentioned I'm a graduate of the United States Military Academy, and I graduated with an engineering degree. That means I put formulas to everything. Okay. That's my curse.
Also, you're yeah, I mean, you're a super smart person.
Yeah. Opinions vary on that, but I appreciate you saying that.
I was talking about this with my kid. Like we need to just sort of remind ourselves about, I mean, especially someone with your qualifications and so on, like how awesome you are, right? I hope that was one
Thank
of
you.
the things you wrote down. If not, then you can add that in your little book.
Thank you. That I appreciate that. You're an encourager, man. That's fantastic. Thank you for that. I receive it. So what I did is I believe that your why is a two-part formula, and it's something you have to live out. It's something you can't actually sit down and figure it out on a piece of paper. It's something
Mm,
that you have to start to live, and it starts to formulate in front of you. So what I believe is that your why is where your passion, what you're willing to suffer for, okay, and where your superpower intersect. When those two things intersect, what happens is your path or your why begins to formulate. So everybody listening, what I recommend they do is they write on a piece of paper when it comes to your passions, a couple things. One is what stirs your soul, what motivates you and inspires you to get out of that warm bed into that cold room on a winter day. But number three, and this is the most important one, what are you willing to suffer for? Because when life gets tough, and it will, it's the passion that's the fuel that helps you rise above the chaos. Like when you're building your business, it is no joke to build your own business. Kudos to you for what you've done, Bobby, with your career. There have been times, man, when you were getting crushed, and it was that passion, what you're willing to suffer for, that lets you rise above it. But the thing is that you can't survive with just passion, because that's just fuel that just rises. What you need is something to guide you above the chaos, which is what you're uniquely qualified to do. And this is very important, because what the beast wants you to do is it wants you to focus on things that you're not uniquely qualified to do, things that distract you, that drain you, that other people can do better. You got to get rid of all that. Instead, you got to focus on the things that you're uniquely qualified to do, your superpower. And the way you discover your superpower, I believe, is three power questions. Number one, what do others say about you? So you probably got in the fashion industry partly because somebody probably edified you and supported you and said, you're good at this. You've got something here. And you needed to hear that, maybe, right? Right. You had no encouragers whatsoever. Bobby's shaking his
sorry,
head for the
nobody
listeners.
can say, yeah,
Tell me.
exactly. We haven't
Yeah.
got
So
to
you were the
YouTube with
opposite. You
these
wanted to
yet.
prove people wrong.
Yeah, basically, it was my whole life was about proving people wrong. It was about proving that, I could one day be a better parent than my parents were to me.
Mm.
Unfortunately, we haven't been able to have children, but we do have two cats and two dogs, and I like to
All
think I'm
right.
doing a pretty fine damn job
What
with
kind of
all
dogs
of
do you
them.
have?
So I have a Cavachon,
Uh huh. I have
and
no idea what that is. Is that a big or small dog?
I thought Cabochons were really popular in America, but there is a cross between a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel and a Bichon Frise, and it's a
Oh,
small
okay.
dog.
I know a
Not,
Bichon for sure.
yeah, not like not a tiny dog where you know I look stupid when I'm out with it.
Yeah.
But she's like slightly bigger than a cat,
Mhm.
and then I have a working Cocker Spaniel, who's a rescue, who's awesome. And then we have two cats. We have just a
Nice.
Moggy, black and white, and a Bengal, who's a psycho.
So what's the difference between a working Cocker Spaniel and just a Cocker Spaniel? Does one get a paycheck or what's that mean?
Yeah, the working cocker is constantly on the go, and they have that kind of fetch mentality, retrieve mentality. We baked it into their DNA.
Mm,
Whereas I think Cocker Spaniels, they have a little bit of that, but they're generally, bred for, because they look really nice, and
yeah, they're good. They're
we call
gorgeous
them show
dogs.
cockers. Yeah, they're beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
but they're all crazy.
I've got
So
a
yeah, so
Labrador. I got a Labrador retriever and a Doberman pinscher.
oh wow, so they're quite big.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah. My
Uh,
wife wanted big dogs because I travel a lot. So she wanted a dog that like the Doberman. He looks like Batman when you look at him in the dark because his pointy
yeah,
ears.
yeah, yeah. He's got this
So if
pointy.
anybody wanted to do her harm, they would think twice about it when they saw, and then his name is Onyx. When they see Onyx staring at him and he's one big muscle, like, let's go to the next house.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We Yeah. Are you sure it's not your dogs that are biting the tires of all your cars? Like chewing
Yeah,
through them?
maybe. I don't know.
I'd keep an eye on that if I were you. Because there's no such thing as a coincidence. Um, but yeah, so firstly it was about proving, my parents wrong, and
Mhm.
then it was sort of all through school and so on. I just felt like I was constantly having to, sort of prove myself to people.
Mhm.
And I think it's only in recent, very, very recently that I'm stopping doing that, like comparing myself to others, or sort of holding myself to other people's standards and so on.
Mhm.
But it
Mhm.
has taken a lifetime for me to get to that stage. So I can
Yeah.
identify with so much of what you're talking about for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the other two questions you can ask yourself, like for you, if you didn't have that edification where others were kind of saying, "Hey, you're pretty good at this, Bobby." The second question you can ask yourself is, "What comes easy to you?" Because there's some things that you take for granted, like you take for granted that you could just see patterns and clothing, and you just can see what works and what doesn't work. I can't do that. I don't have that skill set. You and I were talking before this. My
Mm.
wife has to dress me. One day I was leaving the house and my wife said, "Did you dress in the dark?" And she's like, "You're going to embarrass the Ream family name. Get back in here. Let's change your clothing." So I don't have a strength for that. You obviously do. For me, I just thought everybody liked to get up in front of 1,000 people and speak. I just thought everybody enjoyed that. I didn't realize that that was a skill set, only to
No, it
find out
is.
that most people would throw up in their mouth a little bit if they got up on
Hmm.
stage and had to speak, right? So, what comes easy to you? And then finally, where are you getting professional opportunities? Doors open up to your strengths if you just walk through them and you learn to walk through them. And so, what happened for me is when I started to lean in my strengths and get rid of my weaknesses and I started focusing on my passion, my why began to formulate. And my why was I wanted to work with people. I wanted to teach people. I wanted to speak to people. I wanted to help people. And so that helped me get back on track. And so once you get your why, Mark Twain famously said, the two most important days of your life, Bobby, are the day that you were born and the day that you find out why. Once you
Yeah.
have your why, that's the first step to start to rise above chaos.
Yeah. Oh, you finished?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So
I'm going to
I
see
was
if you had
listening.
something you wanted to add on there, add in there.
No. I was listening so intently, and then all of a sudden you just slam me into a brick wall. I was like, what?
Sorry
There's
about
more.
that.
Because because you said significance
Mm-hmm.
and purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Um and people often interchange those words like they're the same thing, and they're not, are they?
No, they're not. There's one thing to know your why, but it doesn't turn into a purpose until one key ingredient is added to it. And that ingredient is action. That's the difference. There's a lot of people that maybe know what they want to do or have a passion to do something. Like there's a lot of people that would love to do what you do, but there's thousands of people we'll never hear about because they never take action. So in my purpose and what I do is my main goal is I want to help busy, overwhelmed professional men and women rediscover their passion. That's number one, so they can redefine their purpose. But here's the key. You ready for this? Actually get the courage to do something about it, to take the next step. That's the travesty in a lot of people's lives, is they're just afraid to take the steps that they need to take. And so that's the difference. So you want to live a life of significance, but the way you get there is through purpose. Well, you can't get there without taking action, and action is the key. Most people, they're too afraid, or they feel like they have to have everything figured out. Like, look back at your business. When I meet successful people like you, you know what the common thing I realize with people like you and people that are successful is you don't have it all figured out. You know, when you look at someone like you, you're thinking, man, Bobby's got it all going on. He knows what he's doing. I guarantee it. You don't. You're still trying to figure out how to do it. Yeah. And looking back at it, what separated you from others is you just weren't afraid to take the action, or you were afraid, but you did anyway. And that's why you're where you are today.
Yeah. I was saying to my business coach and friend, Wade Galt, the 3-day weekend entrepreneur. His podcast is awesome, by the way. Sorry, that was a really really unsubtle plug, but it is. And I was saying to Wade the other evening that I'm the guy who basically, I tend not to over prepare too much. So if we were in a plane and there was a safety briefing because we were about to jump out, I would have already grabbed the parachute and just jumped out the plane, and then I'll be figuring it out on the way down, because I just want to get on with things, because I know, because if I stand there trying to figure out how to, then I might not ever actually do it. So yeah, he found that quite funny and probably a bit alarming at the same time. But you're absolutely 100% right. I definitely do not have things figured out. I think social media has distorted that as well. It's kind of probably made things worse, because you see people on social media, and Instagram is probably the biggest culprit of this. And, everyone posts that perfect vision of themselves. They always show, the great things that are happening in their lives, the vacations that they're on, and the fancy car and this and that, and being dressed so well. And, the stories they tell as well are all about how, I won this, and I did this, and I was asked to do this. And you very, very rarely see posts that are quite raw. And, like today wasn't such a great day, and this happened and that happened, and so on. And so we only really see one dimension, where we're all very complex. And I think there are even people that we see that are maybe celebrities or whatever. They certainly haven't even got their stuff sorted out or worked out. Sorry, I'm trying not to swear. I'm trying to keep this very clean. So in that respect, no, you're absolutely right. And I think it's only through what you're doing by writing, and what we're doing with when we're on podcasts like this and so on, by talking about these things. I think it's just so important. So yeah, sorry, I'm rambling on now. I tend to sort of do that.
No, but that's fantastic. I love it.
The short answer is yes, you're right, Eric.
Yeah. That's cool, man. By the way, I don't think you heard me because we lost our audio, but I'm really digging your glasses. You're inspiring me to get some new ones. So that might be my next action, is I want to get me some Bobby glasses, because I'm really liking them.
Thank you. These are, hang on, what are they? Sorry, I'm so blind. Like, my eyes are like a -7.5. Victor and Rolf.
Nice. Yeah. I love it. Man.
I got two pairs. I got a pair that are a little bit more subtle, Hugo Boss. And then I got these because I just really liked them when I saw them. And that's one thing that I'm always about. If you see something, whether you're buying an item of clothing, or it's a car, or it's, someone that you're attracted to, if you absolutely love that thing when you see it, go for it. Because
but what if nobody else loves it? Is it okay if you?
It doesn't matter, because this is you. This is your life. This is you. Who cares what anybody else thinks?
I got to ask you a fashion question, because it's bugging me. I need to ask you this question, if you don't mind. So when I'm up speaking, my wife and we always have an argument about the socks that I wear. So my argument is that you can wear loud socks. You can kind of break the mold with loud socks. They don't have to necessarily match your shoes or your belt or whatever, if they're really cool, kind of patterny or whatever. Is that true, or is that a bad move?
So the etiquette is that your socks should match the color of your pants.
Okay. Well, don't tell my wife that, because she'll say, I told you so.
So if she's listening to this, Mrs. R, you're absolutely 100% correct. And Eric, if he hasn't known that through however many years you guys have been married, he should know that by now, that you're always right. But
Socks match the pants.
Socks match the pants, but there's nothing wrong with socks matching the personality if that's something that you want to express, if that's something that you want to portray to the world, and you want people, when they see just that little flash of your sock, that there is something else about you, then by all means wear your Star Trek socks or whatever it is that you're into.
It'd probably be Star Wars.
I'm really glad
Star
you said
Wars.
that. I'm really glad you said that, because I'm on the Star Wars side of the fence as well.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Although weirdly, Star Trek is one of those things where, like my friends that are Trekkies, I'll rip them for it. But then when I think back, I've seen most of the movies. I really love the kind of more, the recent ones that J.J. Abrams did. And but the Next Generation, I obviously absolutely loved it, because I also used to read the books as well.
Oh my gosh.
So there's obviously a bit of Trekkie in me somewhere. So yeah, anyway, sorry, we digress. Let's get back to Planet Earth. So you're when did you write your book, which is out and it's available, by the way, people? I'll put the link in the show notes. But when did you write that, and what was the process of that like for you? Was it quite cathartic, and
oh my
was it quite healing?
Bobby, that's a great question. No one's ever asked me that. So I will tell you, the reason why I decided to write the book was kind of a weird thing. When I first started speaking, when I realized that was my why, I was speaking about, there's a particular book that I read that I really liked. And so I talked a little bit about that book on my talk, right? Well, the author of that book and the speaker of that book, he wrote me an email just out of the blue and said, it was a real legal email, said, you need to stop talking about my stuff or whatever. It was kind of a cold email. And I'm a new speaker, and it kind of shocked me a little bit, because I respect this guy a lot. And it really kind of rocked me a little bit. So I wrote him and said, I'll certainly do that, but would you mind taking a phone call? And to his credit, he did. He got on the phone with me, and he was actually very kind with me. And he's an older guy. And so he kind of took me under his wing and was kind of teaching me a little bit. He said, listen, if you're going to be a speaker, you need to have your own book. You need, because right now you're just doing book reports. You're talking about other people's stuff. You need to have your own stuff. So that's when I started thinking about, well, what is my signature message? And I began to unpack what I was doing to live my significant life. I'm like, you know what? There's a method here that I'm doing. I could probably teach this to people. I'm sure other people can gain from this. And so what I did was I contacted a company in Austin, Texas that helps authors get their books out there, but you own all the material. I don't know if you're into the publishing world much, or if you've written books or anything.
No, not yet. I have had some of my guests say that I have a book or two in me.
Yeah, I would definitely read your book, as long as it's got a lot of pictures in it, because I want to see all the clothes and the what I'm supposed to put on and stuff like that, if you do that. But anyway, so normally you would get a publisher, and you would get an agent and all this and that. I didn't want to go down that route. And so I went the hybrid route, and this company said, okay, we need just this book in 9 months from the day. And so what I did is I woke up every morning for an hour, and I would sit on my couch with the fireplace on, with a cup of coffee and a cover of darkness when everybody else was sleeping. And I would just unpack the journey that I went on. And I would unpack the methods that I did to help me get to the next step. And it was fascinating for me to go through the process, because it was transformative. It really transformed how I looked at my own life. It transformed how I looked at the people that helped me get where I needed to go. And it helped me gain an appreciation from where I was and where I is now. Everybody should go through this process. And then when it was done, I had this beautiful manuscript that I thought the world could use. And luckily for me, and this is the case for you, I know this is the case for you, you can't do anything on an island. You can't do anything by yourself. So I surrounded myself with about 25 really good people that helped me edit it, that helped me come up with the pictures, the graphics, to typeset it, to pick the right paper, to turn this manuscript into something that could help people that needed it. And it was very humbling, to be honest with you, because I took this idea that was in my head, I put it on paper, And then I turned it over to a group of professionals that then took it and made it into this beautiful thing that you guys see today. And it also reminded me that we're so small in the process. It's much bigger than just us. Everybody should have to go through that process because it forces you to think about your life. There's a book out there called Thinking for a Change by John Maxwell. And John Maxwell, he says, and I believe this, that our society, we've forgotten how to think, and we just do. That's all we do. We just do. We solve problems. We don't think very well. And so this book forced me to think. It was a beautiful journey. So I appreciate you asking that question. No one's ever asked me that before. Good job, Bobby. That was awesome.
Oh no, you're absolutely welcome. I mean, it's something that I was wondering about and looking forward to asking you while I was reading it. So, so thank you so much for that, and thank you so much for that insight as well. You've inspired me to get off my butt and actually start this journey. And I've been very fortunate because, it's one thing through podcasting, you just get to meet so many wonderful people from around the world and make so many new friends. And, we've all been on different journeys to each other. We've been on different journeys to each other. And, I have got a few of my previous guests who have reached out to me and have said, when you're ready to start this journey, don't do it on your own. Reach out. We're here for you. We'll help you through. So yeah. And
there's two guys I respect quite a bit that's in your backyard. Mark Lewisti, I'm probably saying his name wrong. He has the Unconventionalist podcast. He's in the UK. He just has finished his book, and it was hard for him. He really struggled with it because it was a big emotional process. And there's another guy named Ravi Rajini, and he's in your backyard too. And he speaks on storytelling. And he wrote a book too, right there in your backyard. So if you wrote a book, dude, I would definitely read it for sure. Because you are an interesting person. I'm really intrigued by your life and your story. I want to know it. I want to follow it. I want to consume it. I can't wait for you to write it.
It's definitely been a roller coaster, that's for sure.
Yeah. I want to wear some of your clothing now. When this is done, I want to start researching your stuff. I want to wear some of it because I'm sure based on what this conversation, it's got to be fantastic.
Oh yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, funny actually, because I'm just prepping a bunch of stuff that's got to go out to Florida to two different clients, one who's getting married and the other one who actually flew all the way over. Oh no, he's not in Florida. He is in Andy, where are you? I can't remember. He'll kill me.
So this is something I just can't buy online, right? I mean, I have to order specifically from you. And do you have a dad bod line? You have a line that fits well on dad bods?
Everything I do is completely made from scratch. Like,
oh my gosh,
do ready-made.
That is awesome.
It's completely made for the person. So for me, it's not even so much about kind of knowing what goes with what. That's just part of my skill set, but it's more about getting to know my customer first and getting to know, your personality, how you want the world to see you, anything about you that you're definitely super confident about, and things about you that you're maybe not so confident about, and then trying to translate that into your clothing, basically. So
that's awesome.
Working out what you want your clothing to do for you, how you want it to feel, how you want it, how you need to be able to move in it, so that when you do put it on, anything I do for you should just become an extension of yourself and just be like a second skin. So so unfortunately you can't just buy my stuff online, not yet anyway. It's all very, very individual. It's called tailoring, I guess one of my clients calls it.
That's awesome. I love it. So how does one become a client? Do we have to submit like a application and you select who you work with? How's that work?
Ooh, yeah. See, if my coach was here right now, he'd be behind me going, yes, that's exactly how you're working now. No. People can. Do you know this is actually we're like probably running up to 70 episodes, and I've never ever talked about this with anyone before because nobody's actually ever asked.
I'm fascinated by it.
So thank you. Oh no, that's fine. I'm happy to indulge. But generally people will get in touch via the website and ask whatever questions they're going to ask, and we start a conversation. And I always like to have an icebreaker call with potential new customers. to see if we get on and if we'd be a good fit. Sorry about the pun. And if the rapport's there, which generally, to be fair, it is with most people, because I think my wife says that I'm very much like water. I get on with most different personality types. There's very few
Another
people that I
another
don't.
Bruce Lee reference here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And God knows how many times I saw Enter the Dragon when I was
Great movie.
very, very young. My mum used
Have
to
you been to
sit me
San
in front of
Francisco?
that. I haven't. That is one pilgrimage that I have to make.
Oh, you got to.
Um,
That's Bruce Lee's backyard, man. You
I
got to
know,
go.
I know, absolutely. Although what my mum was doing, sitting me in front of a rated 18 movie at the age of about 3 is anyone's guess, but there we go. I also saw Poltergeist, and she was really into horror movies. So yeah, I'd seen a lot of stuff that I
Halloween
probably
2.
shouldn't have done.
That's one I saw at too young of an age, and I didn't sleep. I didn't sleep by myself for 2 months after that movie.
Yeah, I remember seeing Halloween when I was about maybe 5 or 6.
Yeah, it came out in the
Yeah.
'70s, right? '78,
Yeah,
something like
that's
that.
right. And so when, because I really was growing up and self-aware as a human being in the 80s.
Hmm.
So these would be reruns or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just
What
remember
year were you
seeing
born?
I was born in 77.
Okay, I was born in '73, so we're about the
Okay, so we're not
same.
far off each other.
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
we we grew up on the same music. We grew up on the
Yeah.
same. All the great '80s bands came from your town there, your area there, and
Yeah,
we grew up on the same movies and shows.
I'm only just discovering those because in the 80s, growing up, you just thought everything was bad. But now we look on it with fondness, and now with Stranger Things and
Oh,
Paper Girls and
that's
all these other.
based on Indiana, by the way, Hawkins, Indiana.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say Hawkins. So we have literally 2 minutes from my house. They've turned an old Toys R Us into a film studios, but the first thing that's being housed there is the Stranger Things live experience,
That's awesome.
based off season 4 with Vecna and so on. So
Oh yeah,
the lab.
yeah, yeah,
And it is literally 2 minutes from my house. It's on the same retail park as our grocery store.
yeah,
So I pass by it every single day, and of course we haven't been there yet. So that's
yeah.
something that we've got to do. But yeah, looking
My
back, the
wife and I've
80s was a
been
great time.
my wife and I've been talking about this. That a lot of the people that are running Hollywood now are our age. You and I. And so they're influencing the movies, and that's why we're seeing a lot of these '80s pop culture references now, because they're
Okay.
making the decisions on what kind of movies and shows are being made. And it's a great time for you and I, because we watch these shows like Cobra Kai's now been kind of getting the Karate Kid franchise going again. And so just watching all these cool movies and songs and stuff that you and I grew up on, it's fantastic, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I could talk about this stuff all day. And certainly I do every other week because I have another podcast that I co-host called Play Pause Turn.
Oh yeah.
And we talk about the things that we read or watched or listened to. It's pop culture and games and movies and music and stuff. So,
So you probably
so
watched The
yeah, so that's
Shining
fun.
then growing up, right? You watched The Shining.
Saw The Shining at a very young age. Saw the Omen trilogy at a very young age, like the
Oh my
first one.
gosh.
That sheet glass incident where the guy's
Oh
head
yeah.
comes off. Yeah, I
Oh my
saw
gosh.
that. I must have been about 3, 4 years old. Yeah, it's just crazy because my mom was
So
just really into horror movies, and
yeah.
so she wouldn't. What could you do? You either sit your kid next to you, you send him up to his room, and it was basically if you can take it, then here you go. But I had night terrors frequently growing up.
Oh my
I had
gosh.
very few nice dreams when I slept.
I can see
Uh,
why. My
Yeah.
son, he's 16. He's into The Shining, and I had a gig in Colorado, and we actually went to the Stanley Hotel and stayed there. So that's where Stephen King stayed when he got spooked out by the Stanley Hotel and wrote The Shining based on that hotel.
Mm.
And so we were there in the wintertime, and it looked like The Shining. The snow was coming down. They
Oh
had
wow.
the bushes that looked like a maze. I mean, I literally thought I was going to see, what was his name, Torrance, Jack Torrance. I thought I was going to
Jack
see him.
Torrance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was crazy, man.
Wow. So I've had so much fun today. I ask every guest this, but I know what the answer is going to be. But have you had fun today?
Oh yeah, this has been a blast. Bobby, I wasn't sure what we were going to be talking about, to be honest with you, but this has been fantastic. And honestly, I could spend hours just asking you questions about fashion because that's something that fascinates me. And it's something that I know I need to be better at. And when you talk to somebody who knows what they're doing and as good as you are, man, I could sit at your feet all day long and just say, what about this? What about that? So here's my question for you, if you don't mind asking. So I got two 16-year-old boys that are going to be becoming adults, right? So what is the baseline piece of clothing that I need to make sure they have? Do I need to make sure they have like a blue blazer? Does every man need to have a blue blazer? What's the toolkit of just basic clothing every man needs to have? What would you say to that?
I would say that on the suit side of things, you definitely need to have a good navy suit for sure.
Mm.
You know, navy is a color that suits anybody, no matter what their complexion is. But also,
Mm.
navy psychologically is of the cold color spectrum is the more trusting. You go between navy to gray, and navy's on the more trusting side of
Oh yeah.
of the cold color spectrum, and that's why, I mean, it's no secret that the majority of the world's police forces wear blue.
Oh, that's a good
It
idea. I never
inspires
thought of that.
trust, inspires confidence, and so your boys are going to be going out into the world, and there'll be, you know, interviews for college, and then after that, interviews for their careers and so on. So a really good navy suit is a must. If you've got a good tailor who and you're having it made, if they cut it in the right way, the coat from the suit will double up as a navy sport coat or blazer or casual jacket for you Brits. So you could potentially get that extra outfit out of one. If you're going to do two suits, then you do a navy suit and you do a medium gray, because then you can mix the coats and pants up between the two as well.
Okay.
You need to have a good strong white shirt, and you need to have probably a good blue shirt as well. And then you need a good pair of black and a good pair of brown shoes. Try and keep the brown nice and dark, because very light tan shoes are better casually. They look cheap with the suit but that's just my opinion. And despite the world falling out of love with ties in recent years, you still need to have a good 2 or 3 ties that you absolutely love. Only buy ties that you absolutely fall in love with the first time you see them. Because you think about every tie that you've bought and never worn, it's because you weren't sure about it when you bought it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's
for
awesome.
your boys, I would say if you were only going to get them one thing, it would be get them a really good navy suit.
That's awesome, man. I'm putting it on the bucket list. They're probably going to get that for Christmas, whether they want to or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Bobby. This has been a pleasure, man, hanging with you.
No, you're welcome. And on that subject, anyone that's been listening that it has been struggling recently and wants to connect with you, where would they find you, and what resources do you have for them online?
Yeah. Well, the best way to just reach out to me and find me is at my website, which is erickrheam.com. It's spelled ERICKRHEAM. Did you know I'm the only Erick Rheam in the world? If you Google me, there's only one. There's only one. My mom must have been way ahead of her time when she gave me that name. She knew that I needed to be easily Googleable, I guess. And so that's really cool to have that name. And then what I recommend for everybody at a minimum, I think you should take what I created, a significance assessment, Bobby. And so it's a 25 question test. And what it does is it shows you where you are on your journey to significance. And then there's a free ebook that'll come with it that'll explain the results and my principle number 2, we didn't have time to talk about today, but there's what I call the 7 elements of the perfect day. And what it does is it tells you which of the 7 elements you should apply right now to go to the next level. So if they want to go check that out, all they have to do is go to yoursignificanceassessment.com, all one word, yoursignificanceassessment.com. So that's what I would do.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I will make sure I have those links in the show notes for everybody as well. And don't forget, as I've said before, Erick's book, Rise Above Chaos, is available from Amazon, and I'm guessing all other places that, bookstores and so on, that you can.
Yep. You can get it at Walmart, Barnes & Noble. It's on Audible now. It's really cool.
Over here, Waterstones, Audibles. I love listening to books on Audible, because when I'm doing things that are occupying my hands, like driving or making patterns and dealing with fabric and stuff, at least I can have my AirPods in and I can be listening to a book and actually utilizing the time to educate myself rather than, doing stupid other things. Erick, thank you so much for your time. I hope the rest of your day is not as weird as probably the last hour has been.
Oh, this has been fantastic. This is a great way to start my day. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime you want to come back on and actually just maybe sit in my seat and ask me loads of questions about tailoring, that would be awesome. Because you're the first person that's asked that many questions. It's great. I love it. Thank you, Erick. Thank you all so much for joining Erick and I on this episode. Don't forget that Tailoring Talk is now on Instagram at Tailoring Talk Podcast, and I love feedback, so you can also email the show directly at tailoringtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review. You can also click the share button in your player to send the show on to people you know. If you're enjoying Tailoring Talk and feel compelled to throw some change our way and support the show, you can now buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Roberto Revilla. Have a great week, and I'll see you on the next one.